Yeah, no, that's just so great what you said, Kyle. You go in restaurants, you see waitresses come over to the oldest person at the table. They treat them like a baby.
Yeah.
So how you doing, honey? Can I get something for you?
Yeah. And you can still feed yourself. That's so good for you. The Career Challenges Podcast, a collection of stories about overcoming professional hurdles and learning lessons the hard way. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Kyle Werkerly, Certified Ghostwriter. So, welcome to the Career Challenges Podcast. My guest for this episode is Pat Whitty. And Pat is a health and life transition coach. So obviously that there's so much that goes into just health and life and life transition. So can you explain more what that is, what it means to you, and then what people can expect if they were to approach you for those services, Pat?
Yeah, well, thank you, Kyle. I mean, it's really a thrill to be asked to be on a podcast. I'm
Yeah.
excited about this, and I love to talk about what I do and where I've come from and where I'm going. But yeah, what I do as a health coach is my mission and purpose right now is to help people, for the most part, in midlife and beyond, achieve greater health and happiness in their life. And that really comes from my own personal experience and
Mm-hmm.
working with a health coach and losing 50 pounds and starting out just as a weight loss project because, I discovered I was obese, for God's sakes. I mean, that just really shocked me. And because I body mass index chart, I was 50 pounds overweight. And so I started working with a health coach, but then I realized that, my goodness, losing weight was so much more than just a vanity thing. I mean, it was my overall health improved. I started sleeping better. I felt better about myself. And because I'm 77 years old, and I thought, a lot of people my age have already shut down, and I'm just getting started. I mean, I had enough energy to start a new business, to leave a really good paying job, to become a full-time health coach because I wanted to really help other people do this in their life, because it kind of saddens me to see how many people do just give up on themselves as they get older, and they think that declining health goes along with declining age. And so I get a great deal of satisfaction out of that. But the life transition part deals with trying to help people, in some cases, figure out what they want to be when they grow up.
Mm-hmm.
There was a research study done recently that pointed out that it's called the U curve of happiness. And that the research showed that statistically speaking, the lowest life satisfaction is around our 40s and 50s in midlife. And statistically, it forms a U curve. And then in some cases, it gradually starts to go up after that. And when I first saw that, I thought, well, my gosh, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But
Mm-hmm. Kind of makes me worried about my 40s and 50s now. Are they going to be depressing years?
Well, yes, probably so.
Wow.
Well, look at it this way. It's in our midlife, when we hit that 40 mark, we start to realize that, it's hard to be a grown-up. I mean, now this is truly a transition, and it's a transition with all the rituals that go along with it. We have the 40-year birthday parties, the black balloons, and the insulting birthday cards that say it's over the hill, and people start making fun of us. And in addition to that, we see the onset of, quote, old age, and life is starting to take its toll on us. The responsibilities of life are weighing on us. We have children. And by the way, statistics have shown if you want to be happy, don't have children. It's a noble thing. But children do not necessarily bring happiness because there's a great deal of stress on our life. And so all of these burdens are coming down on us in midlife. And then we start to pull out of that as we, quote, age. And I do believe that as we get older, we have a different perspective on things. We start to realize, not in a negative way, all things are not possible anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I accept that. And as I read once earlier, that when we're younger, we're really concerned primarily about our resume virtues. We're trying to build skills. We're trying to build a reputation. We're trying to make our mark in the world. As we get older, we're more concerned about our legacy virtues.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to leave behind becomes more important. And so getting older is not necessarily a bad thing. And that's what I really want to do what I can to communicate to people, that this truly can be one of the best parts of our life if you take care of yourself. But one of the problems is that many of us don't take care of ourselves. And you look at people as they age and they've allowed their health to decline. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do as a health coach. I do what I can. I was the dean of the School of Business at a small university here in San Antonio for 2 or 3 years. And I just decided to leave that job because I didn't feel that I was fulfilling my real purpose in life. Mm-hmm. And I felt almost a calling to help people discover what I've discovered. And I mean, I'm 77 years old. I still ride motorcycles. I still go out and run 3 or 4 miles a day. I can go out and play soccer with my granddaughter. And I can bring my 8-year-old granddaughter inside and have her sit on my back while I do planks. I'm telling you,
I can't do that now. That's impressive.
Well, that's my point. And you tell people this, and they say, "Oh my gosh, that's fantastic." Well, it shouldn't be fantastic. It should just be ordinary.
True.
And so, anyway, that's what I do. I'll stop asking. Next question. You got me started.
Well, the question I have, you mentioned this U curve of happiness, that it seems we hit the bottom somewhere in our 40s and 50s, and then it starts to go back up, or it should, statistically, on average, should go back up, meaning people should get happier after those years, and they make those life choices. So I'm curious, does that other side of the U get as high as the first side? Does it happen, or does it just kind of plateau somewhere?
Well, it's different for everybody. For me, as I pull out of it, I'm much happier now at 77 than I was in my 40s. I owned the Dale Carnegie training franchise for all of South Texas for most of my life. And I was insanely motivated to be successful. Mm-hmm. And I equated my self-worth with my net worth. And I thought that in order to be a good husband, a good father, a good person, I needed to be successful and have a lot of money. And somebody asked me once, well, how much money do you need? What's that number? What do you need in the bank? I didn't have an answer for that. But I was working myself to death. I was letting my health deteriorate. I was certainly neglecting my family because I didn't really feel that I could be. I mean, I think about it now, and I've thought about this a lot. It's really insane, but I didn't really think I could be a good father unless I was a good provider and I could provide all those things. And I think it was the way I was brought up. But anyway, I was not happy. I never had enough. And it ended in a divorce. It ended up with broken relationships in my family. And probably one of the worst times of my life. Mm-hmm. It was at one point, I didn't think I would ever pull myself out of it, but I did. And so I can honestly say now at 77, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sitting on the front porch yelling at the kids to get off the front yard every day in a rocking chair. And I don't mean that to sound negative, because if that's what a person wants to do in their later years and they're truly happy and satisfied and totally fulfilled doing nothing in their later years, then more power to them. That's wonderful. I don't think most people are.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us have a mental or metaphorical list in our head. It's like a piece of paper with two columns. With one says IWIH and the other says IGID.
Mm-hmm.
That IWIH column means I wish I had, and IGID is I'm glad I did. And I think that too many people go into those later years of their life, and that I wish I had column is way too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really sad thing because there's so much left to do. And so I went to, I discovered Chip Conley 2 or 3 years ago, who just authored a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of the Modern Elder. And he was this very successful hotelier in San Francisco. He had created a chain of boutique hotels. And he was very well known in the hotel industry, and he was into his 50s, and he sold out his hotel chain, of course, became very wealthy. But Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, had heard about him, so Brian Chesky invited him to come into Airbnb as his personal coach and mentor. So he agreed to do that. So he came into Airbnb, and all of a sudden he was struck with this generation gap because Airbnb is full of millennials,
Mm-hmm.
like a college dorm. He was an old guy in his late 50s. And so he started thinking about this concept of intergenerational partnerships. And because he knew he couldn't go in there as the old guy and lecture into these young kids. So he started to try to learn from them and then create partnerships where he could share his knowledge and wisdom. And that's what caused him to write this book, The Making of the Modern Elder. And then he formed what he called the Modern Elder Academy in Baja. And now he brings 16 to 18 people in almost every week for these retreats. And I was accepted into one about 2 months ago. It was absolutely marvelous, where you spend a week immersed in getting to know yourself better and learning how to figure out what's next in your life and how to overcome all the cultural limitations of getting older, and some self-imposed and some externally imposed, because frankly, our culture does not treat older people well.
Yeah.
I walked out of my job as the dean of the School of Business at the university at 77, and I knew very well that when I made that decision, those doors were going to close behind me and they were never going to open again. I was like Caesar burning my ships as he takes troops into war. There's no return for me at 77 because I don't care how good I am, and I'm really good, and I got a lot of skills and a lot of experience. But the fact is about our culture, I'm not going to get hired.
Yeah.
So I had to make that tough decision to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really in a good place right now, and I think that's possible for everybody.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier you felt you had to be a good provider in order to be a good dad or a good husband, and you discovered that really wasn't true. So I'm curious, what's your mindset now? Looking back with all your years of experience, in your opinion, what makes a good father and husband?
I think it's knowing how to love people.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing how to really connect with somebody and realize that for a child, for instance, doesn't really care about how much money you have in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
A child is more concerned with, do you love me? Do you want to spend time with me? Do you think I'm a good person? What do you see in me that is really good and worthwhile? See, I never had that growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't come from a really bad family. My family was very typical of families in the 50s. My father worked every day. My mother was a housewife. She never worked. And my father went to work every day, came home every night, had dinner. But yet I I never had those moments with my father that I hear so many other people talk about that I envy, where they talk lovingly and longingly about the time they spent with their daddy.
Mm-hmm.
My daddy taught me this, or my daddy and I went fishing, and we had these long conversations. Or whenever I had trouble or problems in my life, I could always go talk to daddy about it. I didn't have that. My father was a good provider, but I just didn't have that. So, we tend to parent the way we're brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, and I had our 8-year-old granddaughter over here for the weekend a couple of weeks ago, and she plays soccer, and she came in the house and she calls me Pop-Pop. Pop-Pop would come out and play soccer with me. Well, it was hot, and my first reaction was, no, I don't want to do that. Come on. But then, I thought, well, wait a minute. Okay, so I did. And fortunately, like I said before, I'm grateful that at 77, I can go out and play soccer with her. So I went out in the street and we kicked a soccer ball around for a while. And it was really wonderful. It wasn't goal directed. It wasn't trying to accomplish anything. It was being in the present moment with my granddaughter, who I love dearly. And we were just having fun together.
Mm.
And I always put that stuff off until I was more successful, and I could relax. Yeah.
So you had mentioned that getting older doesn't mean that, things have to slow down. And that reminds me of my grandmother, because she's still very active. She still walks a lot. In fact, we went and visited her once. My wife and I went up to Washington, where they live, and we went and hiked this really long beach to get to a lighthouse. And so it took us, half a day to hike out there, and of course another half a day to hike back. Okay, so we're having lunch, and this other hiker walks up, and he's pleasant about it. He's a nice guy, but he's talking to us, and he looks at my grandma and grandpa, and he says, "Oh, it's so nice that you guys are still out and active, because so many old people I know are just, they're lazy, they're kind of waiting to die." And I was like, that's kind of odd to say, but we're still pleasant. And we finished our lunch, and we're getting ready to start walking back, and my grandma goes, "I want to beat him because he called me old." Yeah. So I was like, "Okay, Grandma." And she was, just super, super competitive that way. Even now, in her 80s, they just turned 80 this year, and it's like, "Okay, Grandma, slow down." And so it's nice to have that kind of example in my life of somebody who doesn't want to stop. And so you remind me in a good way of my grandparents, because they still don't want to stop.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's such a good point that, first of all, it shouldn't be unusual to see people in their 70s or 80s hiking. It is, and that's why people comment on it, but it shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be. That for the most part is by choice. I don't mean to, negate people who have legitimate medical problems, but most people have neglected their health to the point where they can't do that. I talked to a man just recently who said something that was very shocking to me, but yet it's true. He said, he was talking about his own story. He said, "I reached a point where I decided that I was not going to continue to commit suicide by neglect."
Ooh.
Yeah, and that's what happens when we neglect our health. The other thing about that is that I thought was significant about what you said and your grandmother's reaction to it is the way we treat older people in our culture. That we don't respect them. We don't respect our elders. We make fun of them. You think about this for a minute. Ageism is the only acceptable ism left. Sexism is not cool anymore. Racism is not cool anymore. You used to be able to tell a good sex joke and get laughs. You used to be able to tell a racist joke and get laughs. I'm not saying that that's good. I'm talking about what used to be.
Yeah.
But now it's just not cool in most societies. But it's still okay to tell an old joke. We still okay to make fun of old people, and older people make fun of themselves. The late night comedians make fun of old people. I think that we are just as subject to discrimination as all the other elements of society that are trying to stand up and demand their rightful place in the world. Pay attention to us, give us equal time. And in our culture, we have pushed the elders out the back end while we bring the younger people in. And that's what Chip Conley's Modern Elder Academy is. He's trying to get the concept across of the modern elder is a person who still has the wisdom and the experience and the inclination to mentor and coach other people and to share that wisdom with others. The people are still evolving, changing with the times. They're still committed to learning. They're still curious. And he's trying to promote the idea that companies can really capitalize on this tremendous resource of modern elders who can be great coaches and mentors. Because granted, the millennials they're super energetic, they're brilliant, they've got great creative ideas, but they have no experience, and they're all of a sudden moved quickly up into a management or leadership position, and they don't know what they're doing. And that's not a criticism on them; they just don't know. But you've got this tremendous resource of people who have walked down this path before that you could bring in and partner with them in this concept of intergenerational learning and really create a powerful combination.
Would you like to be a guest on the Career Challenges podcast? Visit careerchallengespodcast.com to find out how. And while you're there, listen to all available episodes and subscribe through Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. More outlets are coming soon. The Career Challenges podcast is produced by me, Kyle Weckerly, and I'm a certified ghostwriter. A little bit more about that. I work almost exclusively with business authors. I've worked with authors who are coaches, consultants, mentors, speakers, some high-ticket salespeople, C-level executives, and of course, business owners. My authors have worked for USAA, Vistage, Booz Allen Hamilton, Austin Technology Council, and the John Maxwell team. They want to write a book, and they want that book to help them expand their business. See, with a book in hand, they're able to market their expertise, or secure more speaking gigs, or promote their company, or all three, or maybe even more than that. They're not out to write a bestseller, though that would be nice. Instead, they have years of knowledge and experience, and sorting it out will be no easy task. More importantly, they want all that knowledge and experience to be an engaging read. To learn more about how you can become an author, visit WeckerlyWriter.com. That's WeckerlyWriter.com, and schedule a consultation today. And now, back to the Career Challenges podcast.
So, this stereotyping thing does really bother me. And that was the first time I realized I was getting old when in a social situation, somebody, instead of saying, "What do you do?" they asked me if I was retired. I said, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" And then I got the senior discount at a movie without asking for it. And that ruined my whole day. And that's what Chip Conley calls facial discrimination. Mm-hmm. You see, they just look at us and they automatically pigeonhole us as, "Oh, you're an old person, and I got to treat you a certain way."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think just from my perspective, being younger, I worry that I may offend people of older stature just because I was brought up to think a certain way, to speak a certain way, and I'm not sure where their background is, and so it's like, well, what do I say, and how do I not? How do I still be respectful, but not at the same time being rude?
Here would be my answer to that. As I said, I spent most of my life working with the Dale Carnegie organization, and Dale Carnegie wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mm-hmm. It's a masterpiece. And one of his principles is become genuinely interested in other people. And he said you can make more friends in 2 hours by becoming genuinely interested in somebody else than you can in 2 years by trying to get them interested in you. So, when you're standing in front of an older person, you're standing in front of a library. And, you just ask them questions about their life, about what they've learned, about their experience. What do they do? It's what Chip Conley said in his book, when an elder dies, a library is burned down.
Oh, wow.
And so we desperately want to share our experiences with people.
Mm-hmm.
But we come from a generation where humility and being humble is a respected value. So we don't want to impose ourselves on people. We don't want to go pigeonhole people and start, although I know some older people do, but most don't.
Yeah.
So find somebody who really wants to know about our experience and really wants to learn from us. It's really a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. So what are some good, I guess, either icebreakers or questions to ask for, somebody listening to this podcast who wants to be like, well, I don't want to be that person who just automatically looks at a quote unquote old person and thinks, well, they're old, so I have to, speak louder, I have to speak slowly and enunciate clearly so that way they can understand me. How can I start a conversation with them to really draw out that wealth of knowledge so that I can benefit from it and, do good things too?
Yeah, no, that's just so great what you said, Kyle. You go in restaurants, you see waitresses come over to the oldest person at the table. They treat them like a baby.
Yeah.
So how you doing, honey? Can I get something for you?
Yeah. And you can still feed yourself. That's so good for you.
Well, it's all a matter of your inner state. Are you genuinely interested in that person?
Mm-hmm.
And are you really genuinely curious about that person? And I think it starts out with the same questions that you would ask in any social and networking situation, because 30 seconds after you say, hi, how are you? My name is, for most people, it's what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And that was what really set me back for the first time ever. Instead of getting that question, I got, are you retired? And, I thought, oh my God, I guess I have to come out of the closet now, because I was hoping nobody would notice, and it really was kind of depressing. So, I would make that assumption, ask them, what do they do? And if they say, oh, I'm retired, well, that's fine, and then you just be curious. You ask appropriate questions. Well, and let the conversation flow wherever it goes. Mm-hmm. Without trying to force it. But it all is driven by genuine curiosity and interest in that person and their life. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can put it into a formula. Here are 5 questions you can ask somebody, because it becomes kind of phony then.
Yeah, true.
But I think most people will tell you their history. I'm retired. Oh, what did you do before you retired? Well, I was a software engineer. My gosh, software engineer, that's great. I've always wanted to learn programming. Mm-hmm. What kind of programming did you do? No. I bet you saw a lot of interesting things while you were there. Mm-hmm. What did you like about that? What frustrated you the most? What are some of the lessons you learned? Well, if you had to give some advice to someone like me who was just starting out in the world, what would you give them? Just let those questions flow spontaneously out of a genuine curiosity and respect for that other person.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So let me flip it on you. When you're in a networking situation and you're talking with somebody who is obviously younger, maybe it looks like they're not even legally of age to drive. What are the kind of the questions that you want to ask them? Either professionally or just like, what is it like for you being a young person?
I used to be a young person. What's it like for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, in this new career that I've started as a health coach, networking is a major part of my strategy. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and Facebook now, mm-hmm. and also in physical networking situations. So, and I've thought a lot about this because I'm an introvert, and networking does not come natural for me. Mm-hmm. So I have to sort of get myself in the right mindset. So I try to go into it and get my mind around, what do I have to give to this group rather than what do I want to get from this group? Oh. Because in networking situations, a lot of people are just going in and shoving business cards around. They're trying to get something. And business today is all about relationships. So, I try to go in there I'm going in to try to meet some people and develop new relationships. And I'm not going to get too attached to the outcome. I'm not going to try to force anything to happen here. I truly believe in the law of attraction, that we get what we think about, whether we want it or not. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that if I go in there thinking that whatever I need is in there right now, and I just got to relax and not try to force things, just have a good time and build relationships. So again, all these conversations start with, "Hi, how are you? My name's Pat Whitty." So what do you do? And then that launches the whole conversation and be interested. So I work for Rackspace. Oh my gosh, Rackspace. I've always wanted to go over to Rackspace. What's it like to work at Rackspace? That must be really cool. And because I do. I think that I've never been to Rackspace before, and I think it would be a cool place to see. Mm-hmm. And then, you be honest. I say, boy, the world has changed so much. People are doing business in ways that they weren't doing it when I was your age. What do you just ask those curiosity-based questions? Mm-hmm. I would also like to find out what people want to be when they grow up. I like to ask people that question about their education, or say, well, what are your goals in life? Where are you trying to go? What do you see down the road? You just try to get a better understanding of their life and what they're trying to do. And just be aware of the information that bubbles up in that conversation. For instance, if I meet somebody in a networking situation who's a single mom who's got 3 kids, wow, I want to know. That must be a real challenge.
Yeah, it is.
How do you manage that? Yeah. You just got to let people know that you're really interested in them. Mm-hmm. And the problem that we face in today's world, unfortunately, we're moving toward that it's all about me.
Yeah. It is a counterintuitive mindset to think more of others than you think of yourself. So, kind of interesting.
It is, yeah. And it's a better way to be. And these are lessons I've learned the hard way, because I didn't always have these thoughts. It used to be all about me. Let me tell you a quick story.
Sure.
So when I was at the Modern Elder Academy in Baja, I had the opportunity to go up to the top of a mountain with a shaman, a real shaman.
Wow.
It was just the 2 of us. It was about a 30-minute drive. We went up the top of a mountain overlooking the ocean. It was absolutely beautiful. He was dressed in his full robes. We had this ritual up there where we meditated. It was about a 3-hour session. And we were standing there, and he was looking into my eyes, and he was telling me stuff about myself. And it was really kind of spooky that he was correct. And he cleansed me of my negative emotions. He had a batch of fresh basil, and he sprinkled some mescal on it and did some chants, and he had me rub this basil all over myself while I was meditating and chanting, and then he had me wad the basil up and throw it over the cliff. All my negative emotions went. And I swear I believe it worked, because I could almost feel myself being freed. But while we were doing that, this bird flew over us. Out of nowhere, this bird appeared, and he came over and he literally circled right around above us. And I looked up at it, and Saul, the shaman, he looked at it too. And I watched that bird wasn't even working. You know how birds can catch the currents, and they
they kind of like hover there. Yeah,
they were effortless, just effortless. And I said, Saul, look at that bird. That bird is harnessing the power of the universe, but he's still able to control his motion and go where he wants to go, but he's not even working at it. And I feel like that bird is looking at me right now and saying, you've tried to impose your will on the universe your entire life, and look at where it's gotten you. And you can't even fly. Look at me. I'm just floating on the waves of air. And that was a big lesson for me, is to quit trying so hard to impose my will on the universe and other people and trying to force things to happen, and to be more open and to allow things to flow through me and to allow things to happen as they will. And as I said, we get what we think about, whether we want it or not. And in my life, I've learned that I've spent a lot of time thinking about stuff that I don't want and stuff I'm afraid of. And it's amazing how much I've attracted that to me. Mm-hmm. And now I'm spending more time thinking about what I do want. And it's just almost magical how the people I need in my life appear magically. The information I need appear magically. It's so easy. Mm-hmm. It just is.
Well, so what if someone or a younger person, let's stick with that line of thinking and questioning. So what if a younger person comes up to you, Pat, and says, well, I've tried to think positively. I've tried to, keep those negative thoughts out of my head and just focus only on the positive, and it's not working. I'm still not getting the opportunities I want to be, manifesting in my life, or I'm not meeting the people who I feel would really, I could really benefit from having in my life. What do I do? How can I, do what you do, Pat?
Well, negative thoughts show up like uninvited guests at our doorstep. None of us ever sit down and say, okay, I got 10 minutes now. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to call up the worst possible things I can think about. I'm going to think about all of my fears. They just show up. Mm-hmm. And we invite them in and we spend some time with them. So, that's one of the problems. And so that we have to visualize what it is that we want. And again, not get too attached to the outcome. So for instance, what I try to work with my health coaching clients on, let's say I have a client here, he says, I want to lose 50 pounds. Mm-hmm. All right, that's a good start. But when you say that, what you're doing is you're running away from something. You're taking a problem-solving approach here. So let's convert that. Instead of saying you want to lose 50 pounds, how much do you want to weigh? Instead of thinking about what you don't want, think about what you do want. Okay, so what I really want to do, I want to weigh 185 pounds. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So now then, let's take that number, 185, and let's convert that into a picture. When you're 185 pounds, what are you going to look like? What are you going to feel like? What are you going to be able to do that you want to do that you're not able to do now? And so you work with them, and all of a sudden they create a picture that they can touch and see and feel and experience, and all of it. And then they can get an emotional attachment to that picture. Mm-hmm. So then that becomes the driving force. Instead of running away from something that they don't want, which doesn't work, mm-hmm. they begin to run towards something they do want. So if somebody said to me, look, I'm trying to think positively, I think I would ask them, so what do you want? And listen to what they said. And if it was fuzzy, then I would try to help them try to clarify and bring that picture into focus. Because I think, and I'm talking from my own experience, I used to think about that in terms of platitudes and cliches. Oh yeah, I just want to be successful. Well, everybody wants to be successful.
Yeah.
But, you don't know what exactly that means. What does that look like for you? And so in our health coaching work, we call that, finding your big why. Mm-hmm. And once you've got that why, that's when the magic happens.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And I think that a lot of people they're not pursuing their own why, especially younger people. They're pursuing other people's why. It might be their parents' why. I talk to so many people. They've pursued their college degree because that's what their parents wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. Or they're looking around their friends, or they've chosen their profession because you can make a lot of money in this profession, but it's not what they really want to do because they haven't really figured out who they are. Mm-hmm. And
Well,
that's,
then what if they, they don't know who they are yet, and they're not quite sure what vocation they should go into? What advice would you give them in that situation? Because the reason why I asked too is, when I was 18 and 19 and deciding what I should do with my life, it's like, well, what do? I really had no ambition. Looking back now, I can honestly say I had no ambition. And I did end up going to college and, got married. And it wasn't until I was 27, 28, 29 that I feel, some life events happening, and that I really sat down and forced myself to, look at myself. What is it I want to do? What truly makes me happy? What can really benefit the world at large? And how did those meet? And that's how I came across writing, and then eventually ghostwriting, and now this podcast. And so it's taken me a long time to get to that point. And so I'm just curious: is there a way to get to that faster, especially for those who are, in their formative years, late teens, early 20s?
well, when you were in those younger years, was there something that your hand just turned to automatically that you really loved to do? That when you were doing it, you almost lost all sense of time and space. You were totally engrossed in it.
Yeah, and that was telling stories. I really loved to draw and to write at that time, and it was all about, how can I make an entertaining story, and then being part of entertaining stories, because I would go to a lot of movies too. So
And that's what you're doing now, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, we sometimes negate those natural things that bubble up in us, that this is what I really love to do, but there's a voice inside of us that says, this is not what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we let society or the culture push us in one direction, which, it may be the way it should be, because the realities of life is that we do have to get a good job. We have to make money. We have to make a living. And not everybody can enjoy the luxury of doing that, as Joseph Campbell said, following their bliss.
Yeah.
But I think too many people negate that, and they just shut it off instead of say, okay, I'm doing this out of necessity now. This is not really where I belong. This writing or storytelling is what I really want to do. Maybe I should pursue that as a side hustle and start developing that on the side, so I can enjoy that part of my life, and I can pursue that talent, and I can develop that part of myself, because I really feel good about me when I'm doing that. And when I'm sitting in this cubicle at work, I don't feel good about me.
Yeah. Or working out in the Texas heat to do some sort of labor job.
Oh my goodness, I don't see how to do that.
Yeah. So one more question before I get to the last one here. So you're a health and life transition coach. If a young person, or somebody slightly younger, were to look at you and say, that's exactly what I want to be doing, Pat Whitty is kind of where I want to be, what steps should they take to get to where you are now? What advice would you give them?
Well, it depends on where they are right now. I mean, in the business model that I'm working under, I could bring a person in as a health coach, as a side hustle, and teach them how to do it and help them get clients. Because in my business model, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be an expert. There are opportunities to get certified as a health coach, but in my work, a health coach is mainly a guide, a cheerleader, a support person, and to hold people gently accountable for doing the things they need to do to get where they want to go. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I could help somebody become a health coach if they wanted to. As a side hustle, I certainly would never advise anybody to do what I did. Just leave a good paying job and go into it full time.
Yeah,
because that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I think the concept of side hustles are really kind of popular today, because I find that the corporate world today is becoming pretty brutal. And so many people, on LinkedIn today, one of the most popular topics is toxic cultures and toxic leadership.
Yeah.
And statistics show that the majority of people at work, they're not engaged at work, and they don't really like what they do. So, but yet we get trapped into that. We got to have that paycheck. We can't afford just to walk away from it. So side hustles are a great thing if you find the right one. You find a good side hustle where you have the right people who will coach you and mentor you, who can maybe see your talents. And there are some out there. You certainly want to try to avoid scams. There are a lot of scams out there that are trying to bring you in. But my goodness, there's, I did a couple of LinkedIn videos based on my own experience, and I call it those driveway moments that I experienced before I left my job. And then I'd drive to work every morning and park in the same parking place after I drove the same route every morning. And I sat there in the car before I got out. And I'd think, why am I doing this? I don't want to go up there.
Yeah.
I don't want to go sit in that cubicle all day and answer emails. And I'd really have to just work on myself. And then finally, after a couple of minutes, and, I'd actually start to meditate a little bit. And then I'd just finally suck it up and do it. And then, I got to the point where I said, this is ridiculous. I'm 77 years old. I'm grateful that I have this job. Most people don't have a job at 77. But is this really the way I want to spend the rest of my life? No, it was not the way I wanted to spend the rest of my life. So I just took the big leap and did it.
True. So don't do exactly what you did, is what you're saying.
Well, no, I wouldn't walk out of a good job. I mean, I'd say my challenge is, because of my commitment to health and regaining my own health, I'm afraid I'm going to live to be 100.
There you go.
And I don't have enough money to last me that long. So I got to work, and I got to bring in a little revenue to keep me alive.
There you go. Yeah. Unfortunately, we all got to have money some way. Yeah. All right. So Pat, what's next for you? What's next for your business?
Well, it's only been about 3 months, so I'm starting it to build the business. The next step is to build a team of coaches under me. So by within the end of the year, I want to have at least one other health coach working with me that I can train and mentor. And into 2020, I want to have a team of 5 health coaches who are having an adequate amount of paying active clients. And my vision is, I know a lot about team building, and I know I've worked on really good teams and I've worked on really bad teams. And it's a really wonderful thing to work on a good team where people support each other, they encourage each other, they respect each other, and maybe not even an overstatement to say they love each other, but they celebrate each other's successes. And I want to have that I want to build a business that has that kind of team of people who really and truly are working together in harmony toward a common objective with a noble purpose. And I can't think of any better purpose than trying to get people healthy and to live longer and happier.
Awesome. So Pat, if somebody's hearing this and they're like, yes, I want to live healthier, or at least want to consider my choices and transition into something different in my life, how can they reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Well, they can find me at my email address, first of all. Is it okay to give that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It's Whitty, PWHITTY, at mac.com. I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook group that I'm building of people who want to learn more about health, because I kind of consider myself a curator. I'm gathering up information all the time. And so I'm building this group that provides information and assistance and advice to people who are concerned about their health. Also, I'm putting videos on there every day, trying to get a conversation. And that Facebook group is called Health and Happiness in Midlife and Beyond.
Awesome.
And you can also look me up as Pat Whitty, Patwhitty on Facebook. And also the same thing on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So all those avenues or you can just call me direct at 210-744-8999.
Awesome.
I know that, I always like to say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And sometimes the first step is just picking up the phone and making a phone call or getting some information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was for me in my journey. And now I can give you a personal example of a first step. I've been thinking about skydiving for some time, and I'm moving closer and closer to it.
Mm.
I've made a personal commitment. I'm going to go skydiving. Now, I haven't booked it yet, but I've made the commitment. I'm going to do it. And so a couple of weeks ago, I took the first step. And that was just to pick up the phone and call, I think it's San Marcos, the airport, and get information about it. How much does it cost and how do you go? It's amazing what that first step will do. Now, I didn't book it. I didn't make the commitment. But I'm one step closer to it. And so that's what happens to me a lot in this business is people are sometimes thinking about their health for a long time. They're reluctant to take that first step. The first step is sometimes a phone call. It's a conversation. Sometimes the conversation leads to a commitment to move forward. Other times it says, well, let me think about it. And I've had people come back months or maybe a year later and say, okay, I'm ready now. Mm. That's how it starts.
Awesome. And what's the name of your coaching business?
It's Chapter 4 Coaching.
There we go. Yeah.
Because I help people write the next chapter of their life.
Awesome. And so I want to make sure we got that in there as well before we sign off. But thank you so much, Pat Whitty. This has been an awesome conversation. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Oh, I have. It's been great. It's been really wonderful. Matter of fact, I can't wait to hear it. I'm going to make sure I get it.
Yeah. So, So thank you for joining me on the Career Challenges podcast today.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you for listening to the Career Challenges podcast. Visit careerchallengespodcast.com to listen to more episodes and subscribe. And don't forget to schedule a consultation to talk about your book today by visiting weckerlywriter.com. That's WECKERLYWRITER.com.